The film opens with a scene of three little kids trying to kill a dog. In the middle of that situation, a blonde-haired boy shows up and saves the dog. 20 years later, the story shifts to a high-speed chase on the streets of St. Petersburg. Major Igor Grom, a police officer known for his persistence, is chasing three bank robbers. Even though he falls behind at one point, Igor doesn't give up. Igor looks for an alternative route and eventually manages to get into the robber's car after it crashes into a bus. Unfortunately, Igor gets shot and dies. It turns out all of that only exists in his imagination. Igor dies over and over again, repeating the chase as if he's trying to find the best way to catch them. In the end, Igor tries using a garbage truck to stop the robber's car, and the plan works. The problem is, the truck's brakes are broken. The truck loses control and crashes into a statue that is being inaugurated by his superior, Inspector Fyodor. Even though the robbers are successfully arrested, Igor's actions cause serious damage to public facilities. At the police station, Dima, the new guy in the office, has just arrived and immediately sees how chaotic the place is. Not long after that, Igor is summoned by Inspector Fyodor because his actions are considered reckless. Before entering his superior's office, Igor places betting money on his coworker's table, a habit he often has. They bet that this time Igor will definitely get fired. Inside the office, Fyodor scolds him for destroying 200 meters of road and carrying out an operation on a day off without permission. Igor tries to explain that if he hadn't acted quickly, the robbers would have already escaped. Out of frustration, Fyodor asks him to write a resignation letter. Igor follows the order and hands over his badge. However, after Igor leaves, Fyodor, who actually knows that Igor is one of the best cops, throws the letter away. Fyodor never really intends to fire Igor. Meanwhile, Igor walks out casually and takes the bet money he won. He then gives the money to an old man who was a mugging victim as a small act of empathy from a police officer who still has a heart. After finishing things at the office, Igor goes to the trial of Kirill Kreskin, the son of a billionaire whom Igor arrested for hitting a little girl named Lisa until she died. Lisa's older brother, Alexei, testifies that Kirill was driving drunk. But money speaks louder. Kirill manages to bribe the judge and walks free of all charges. Seeing that, Alexei gets angry and almost attacks Kirill. Igor quickly holds him back so Alexei doesn't cause more trouble. He doesn't want Alexei to end up in prison because of his emotions. Not long after, Olga, the caretaker of the orphanage where Lisa and Alexei grew up, arrives and worries about Alexei's psychological condition. Igor then gives his contact number to Olga, just in case Alexei does something reckless again. In another part of the city, Sergey, a young tech billionaire, has just launched his new social media platform called Vimeste. In his presentation, Sergey explains that Vimeste prioritizes freedom of speech and is equipped with a one-way NFC system to maintain user security and privacy. Sergey looks confident, especially with support from his childhood friend Oleg, who is always there at every important step of his life. But the atmosphere suddenly changes when Sergey receives information that Kirill, Lisa's killer, has just been released. Unable to hold back his emotions, Sergey immediately displays the news on a large screen in front of all the attendees. Lisa's death leaves a deep wound for him, especially because they came from the same orphanage. Sergey feels frustrated realizing that technology and good intentions alone are not enough to fight a broken legal system. Seeing his friend's anger, Oleg promises to help Sergei achieve justice in a way they never imagined before. Meanwhile, on the other side of the story, Igor turns out to be quite close to Fyodor, his superior. At Fyodor's house, Igor is already treated like his own son because Igor's late father was Fyodor's close friend. During that visit, Igor receives news from Olga that Alexei has gone missing. Olga is worried that Alexei might recklessly take revenge on Kirill. That same night, Igor heads straight to Kirill's house. When he arrives, Igor is shocked to see a mysterious figure wearing armor and a mask burning Kirill's car, with Kirill still inside. Kirill dies instantly. Igor tries to fight the masked figure, but the person's movements are very fast and tough. The figure then strikes back by firing a flamethrower, but Igor manages to dodge it. The next morning, Igor reports the incident at the police station. Unfortunately, his colleagues mock the suspect's sketch based on his story. Even Fyodor doesn't really believe it at first. However, Fyodor still informs him that Alexei was found at the scene and arrested. After that, Fyodor returns Igor's badge. Fyodor realizes that Igor is still needed for this case. Not long after, Dima arrives with a much more accurate suspect sketch. Igor enters the interrogation room and asks Alexei whether he saw the real perpetrator. But Alexei claims he doesn't know who the masked person was. Alexei is only sure that the figure is a true hero because he killed Kirill. To uncover the identity of the masked figure, Igor begins investigating possible suspects. Igor looks for information about flamethrowers and people who had connections with Kirill. But until late at night, Igor hasn't found any clues. On his way home, Igor sees a woman being attacked by two criminals. Igor immediately steps in and saves her, then invites her to his house to treat her injuries. Without Igor knowing, the woman secretly photographs documents about the Kirill case while Igor is distracted. It turns out the woman is Yulia, a crime content creator who deliberately hired thugs so she could get into Igor's house to obtain exclusive material. Meanwhile, at Sergei's house, the identity of the masked figure is finally revealed. The figure is Oleg, his own best friend. When he finds out that Oleg killed Kirill, Sergei is shocked and terrified. Sergei never imagined that Oleg would actually use the technology they created to kill someone. But for Oleg, that choice couldn't be avoided. Oleg believes there is no other way to enforce justice in that country. Oleg then introduces his new identity, Dr. Plague. Not long after that, Oleg strikes again and releases an execution video of Olga Isaeva, a billionaire involved in an investment scam. The video immediately goes viral. Many people who are disappointed with the legal system begin to see Dr. Plague as a hero. For them, Dr. Plague is a symbol of resistance against injustice. That morning at the murder scene connected to the investment scam case, Fyodor tells Igor that the investigation has now been taken over by a special team from Moscow led by Evgeny. Fyodor directly asks Igor not to get involved anymore. Igor clearly feels pushed aside. Instead, Fyodor assigns him to work with Dima to investigate the disappearance of 12 refrigerators. Dima looks very excited because this is his first case, but Igor stays indifferent since he's already used to working alone. Igor then takes Dima to his old friend Habib's boxing gym to look for clues about the masked figure. Habib gives them a list of names that might be involved. Igor visits them one by one, but still doesn't find any truly useful information. Igor then remembers Dr. Plague's Firmeste account. Igor intends to investigate it directly at the platform's headquarters. Feeling that Dima isn't much help, Igor tells Dima to go back to the office and make a fake report as if they spent the whole day dealing with the refrigerator case. When he arrives at the Vermeste office, Igor meets Sergei to ask about the possibility of tracking Dr. Plague's account. But Sergei explains that the one-way privacy system they use is extremely strict, and even he doesn't have access to track user data. Igor returns to the office. Dima then shows him Yulia's latest video. In the video, there is a sketch of Dr. Plague's face that looks very similar to Dima's drawing. Igor immediately realizes that Yulia stole investigation documents when he wasn't paying attention. Annoyed, Igor goes to Yulia's apartment and demands an apology. But Yulia refuses and says that everything she did was to uncover the truth. Igor warns her not to repeat it, then destroys Yulia's laptop before leaving. That night, Dr. Plague appears again. Dr. Plague uploads a video of the murder of Philip, the owner of a toxic waste disposal site. The waste caused many babies to be born with disabilities and residents to suffer serious illnesses. Shockingly, Dr. Plague doesn't just kill Philip, but also his wife and child. This action makes many people start to see him as a psychopath. But strangely, even more people begin to follow and support him. Dr. Plague even gets product promotions and starts selling merchandise. His supporters also begin causing riots while wearing masks like their idol. Meanwhile, at their base, Sergei is furious at Oleg over the murders involving children. Sergei threatens to shut down Vermeste if Oleg doesn't stop, but Oleg reminds him that Sergei himself has been involved from the start, and shutting down the platform won't change anything. According to Oleg, Vermeste actually shows what society truly is. On the other hand, Dima comes to Igor's house. Dima is shocked to see Igor's walls covered with clippings about Dr. Plague's cases. Dima theorizes that the perpetrator might come from a lonely orphan background. Dima asks Igor to investigate orphanages, but Igor refuses. Igor prefers to catch Dr. Plague in the act. Dima then helps by analyzing the victim pattern. Dima realizes that all of Dr. Plague's victims are wealthy people who are untouchable by the law and harm society. From that pattern, Dima suspects the next target is the opening party of the Golden Dragon Casino, a place where many city elites gather. Dima suggests that Igor report it to Evgeny, but Igor stays stubborn and decides to act on his own. After putting together a plan, Igor asks Habib for help to get access to the Golden Dragon opening party. There, Igor sees Albert as the casino owner, along with various other wealthy figures, including Sergei. In the middle of the crowd, Igor runs into Yulia, who is setting up a listening device. They end up dancing, and Yulia says she's starting to suspect that Sergei is involved in something suspicious, especially since Sergei recently signed a cooperation contract with an advanced weapons company called Hoth International. In the middle of the party, the atmosphere suddenly turns chaotic when a group of masked mobs break in. They attack the security guards and take the guests hostage. In that critical situation, Sergei tries to calm them down by offering money, but instead gets beaten. Seeing this, Igor immediately steps in, saves Sergei, and fights the attackers. Amid the chaos, Igor is shocked when he sees that Alexei is actually among the mob. Not long after, Yevgeny arrives with a police force after receiving information from Dima, who had been threatened earlier. The perpetrators are eventually arrested, even though Dr. Plague doesn't show up at all. After the incident, Sergei approaches Igor to thank him for saving his life. But unlike Sergei, Yevgeny scolds Igor for acting without procedure and immediately decides to fire him. As Igor leaves the building, Yulia shows up with footage of the incident, but Igor, still emotional, ends up smashing her phone. The next day, at the police station, Yevgeny orders Fyodor to fire Igor. Even though it's hard, Igor chooses to resign so Fyodor won't be under even more pressure. As part of office tradition, Igor takes the bet money from his firing and gives it to Dima, who feels very guilty for failing to keep the secret. That night, Igor still comes to Fyodor's house. There, Fyodor advises him not to always act alone. According to him, having partners you can truly trust is a great strength that can't be replaced. Those words make Igor think. The next morning, Igor goes to Yulia's place to apologize and replace her phone, even though it costs him a lot of money. Even though he's no longer a cop, his determination to uncover Dr. Plague's identity remains strong. Igor remembers Dima's words about the perpetrator possibly coming from an orphanage. The following day, Igor goes to that orphanage. Igor is shocked to see how luxurious the place is. Olga, the caretaker, explains that all the funding comes from Sergei. There, Olga also shows some of Sergei's childhood belongings, including a diary containing sketches of a mask similar to Dr. Plague's. From that moment, Igor starts to suspect that Sergei is involved. Igor immediately goes to Sergei's house. Sergei, who is drunk, shows documents of cooperation with Hoth International and also the mask sketches in his diary. However, Sergei still denies everything. Suddenly, Oleg appears out of nowhere. Strangely, only Sergei can see him. Igor then explains that Oleg actually died a long time ago in Syria. Sergei panics and hits Igor with a bottle until he passes out. It turns out that all this time, Oleg was just a hallucination, part of Sergei's split personality. Sergei himself is Dr. Plague. The little child at the beginning of the film is him. Sergei once killed and burned 3 children who tried to hurt a dog. That psychopathic nature had been there since childhood and now has fully taken over him. His madness reaches its peak when Sergei kills the owner of the Golden Dragon Casino and hangs the body from the top of the building while burning it alive. On the same rooftop, Igor suddenly wakes up wearing Dr. Plague's costume. Igor immediately realizes that he's been framed. The building is already surrounded by police, and all the evidence points to him. Even so, Igor still tries to escape. He uses a flamethrower and jumps from one building to another. However, his escape is stopped when Dima manages to stun him. At the police station, Igor tries to explain that the real culprit is Sergei, but Evgeny doesn't believe him at all. At the same time, police search Igor's house and find various weapons and bombs, all planted earlier by Sergei to strengthen the frame-up. Across the city, Dr. Plague's followers begin to demonstrate, demanding that their leader be released. In the middle of the increasingly chaotic situation, Yulia disguises herself as a lawyer and visits Igor in the detention room. Yulia believes Igor was framed and wants to help. Igor still refuses, but Yulia doesn't give up. With Dima's help, Yulia manages to help Igor escape. They take him to Fyodor's warehouse to hide and plan their next move. At Fyodor's warehouse, Igor finally prepares to face Sergei alone. Even though Yulia and Dima want to help, Igor insists on working by himself. His stubborn nature hasn't disappeared, even as the situation grows more dangerous.
Держи фонарик. Извини.
Игорь, стой, у тебя хоть план есть?
As soon as he arrives at the office, Igor immediately comes face-to-face with Sergei, who is already waiting while wearing the Dr. Plague costume. Sergei explains his plan to create a new world without corrupt people. But for Igor, the brutal method Sergei uses can't be justified at all. A fierce fight breaks out. After exchanging attacks, Igor finally manages to damage Sergei's flamethrower. But Sergei isn't out of ideas. Sergei immediately uploads his final video, containing a list of wealthy and corrupt people who, according to him, should be eliminated by his followers. It turns out Sergei has also prepared another plan. The bombs that were previously found in Igor's house had actually been fitted with triggers by Sergei. At that very moment, Sergei detonates the police station, leaving the authorities powerless and the city even more chaotic. His followers on the streets act even more brutally. Even though the situation is completely out of control, Igor keeps standing his ground against Sergei. When Igor is almost defeated, Dima and Yulia arrive just in time to save him. With the strength they have left, the three of them finally manage to subdue Sergei. However, even while tied up, Sergei keeps talking as if he's already won. Sergei says that the police have already accused Igor of being Dr. Plague, and in the end, Sergei will easily walk free, but Yulia immediately shatters that arrogance. Yulia shows a video that was secretly recorded from the start, including footage from the listening device Yulia placed on Igor's body when she hugged him. With that evidence, the full truth about Sergei's split personality is finally revealed. The city slowly returns to calm. The government then announces major reforms in the legal and judicial system. Meanwhile, Igor, Dima, and Yulia build a stronger friendship, ready to protect the city from the next threat. The film closes by showing Sergei now being held in a mental hospital, still haunted by the dark side of himself. And the story comes to an end.